This story didn't scream for attention, but TH signs were always there, you just need to look closer. This is hidden witness. I thought I was alone until someone knocked from inside the house. The first time I heard the knocking, I thought it was coming from the front door. 3 slow knocks, knock, knock, knock. I was alone. At least, I thought I was. I walked downstairs and checked the door. Nobody was there. I checked the windows. Nothing. Then I heard it again. 3 knocks. But this time, they weren't coming from the front door. They were coming from inside the house. And that's when I realized something terrifying. There was a room in my house that I had never been able to open. A lonely old house in the middle of a dark forest at midnight, heavy rain. One dimly lit upstairs window, broken wooden fence, mist surrounding the house. A terrified person standing outside looking toward the window, cinematic supernatural horror, photorealistic dark atmospheric lighting, 16:9, no text, no gore. I bought the house because it was cheap, almost suspiciously cheap. It stood at the end of a narrow road, surrounded by trees. There were no neighbors nearby, no traffic, no streetlights. Just forest. The previous owner told me the house had been empty for almost 3 years. He gave me one warning. Don't worry about the locked room upstairs. I laughed. I assumed he was talking about a storage room. I didn't ask questions. That was my first mistake. Old isolated 2-story house surrounded by dense trees, late evening, overgrown garden, peeling paint, narrow windows, atmospheric fog, ominous rural setting, cinematic horror realism, 16:9. The room was at the end of the upstairs hallway. There was an old wooden door, no keyhole, just a metal handle and an unusual lock. I tried opening it, nothing. I asked the previous owner about it. He became uncomfortable. Then he said, "Some things in an old house are better left alone." I thought he was joking. I didn't think about the room again, not until the first night. Old wooden hallway inside a neglected house. Single locked door at the end. Antique brass handle, peeling wallpaper, dim yellow light, mysterious shadows, supernatural horror atmosphere, photorealistic, 16:9. The first night I woke up at exactly 2:17 a.m. I don't know why the house was completely silent. Then knock, knock, knock. I sat up. I waited, nothing. Then it happened again. 3 knocks. I walked into the hallway. The sound was coming from upstairs, from the locked room. I stood outside the door, and then something knocked back, not from the other side, from inside, dark bedroom at 2:17 a.m., digital clock glowing on bedside table, terrified person sitting upright in bed listening to distant knocking, moonlight through curtains, cinematic supernatural horror, photorealistic, 16:9. I put my ear against the door at first, nothing. Then I heard breathing, slow, heavy, someone was standing inside. I stepped backward, then a voice whispered, "Please." I froze. The voice sounded like a woman. I asked, "Are you okay?" Silence then, don't let him find me. I ran downstairs. I slept in my car that night. Terrified man standing inches away from an old locked wooden door, ear pressed against it, darkness underneath the door, subtle shadow moving on the other side, cinematic horror, photorealistic, 16:9. The next morning, I called the previous owner. I told him what I'd heard. He didn't laugh. He didn't tell me I was imagining things instead. He asked, "Did she say anything?" I said yes. There was a long silence. Then he said, "You need to leave." I asked him who was inside that room. He answered, "My daughter." I thought he meant his daughter had once lived there, but then he said something that made my stomach drop. She died 22 years ago. Older mysterious man standing outside an isolated house during overcast afternoon. Serious expression, dark jacket, trees behind him. Tense supernatural mystery atmosphere, cinematic photorealism, 16:9. He came to the house that afternoon. He brought an old photograph. It showed a young woman standing outside the house. He told me her name was Emily. She had disappeared one night when she was 19. The police searched the property. They never found her. The family eventually believed she had run away, but the previous owner had never believed that. Because the night Emily disappeared, he heard knocking, 3 knocks. From inside the locked room, old family photograph lying on a wooden table, young woman standing beside an old house, face slightly obscured by shadow, yellowed edges, mysterious atmosphere, cinematic supernatural horror, photorealistic, 16:9. That night, I decided to investigate. I found a hammer. I broke the lock. The door opened. Inside was an empty room, dust, old furniture, nothing else. Then I noticed something strange. The wall behind the wardrobe sounded hollow. I moved the furniture. There was a small wooden panel. Behind it was a narrow passage, and the passage went deeper into the house. Old upstairs room with wooden walls, hidden narrow opening behind peeling wallpaper, flashlight beam revealing a dark secret passage. Dust particles in air, supernatural mystery horror, cinematic photorealism, 16:9. I followed the passage. It led downward, under the house. At the bottom was a small room. There was an old chair, a mattress, a rusty lamp, and dozens of photographs. Photographs of the house, photographs of Emily, photographs of people who had lived there before. Then I found something that made me stop breathing. A photograph of me, standing outside the house. The photograph had been taken that morning. Hidden underground room beneath an old house. Narrow wooden staircase leading downward, dusty walls, old photographs and abandoned belongings. Flashlight illuminating the darkness, eerie supernatural horror, photorealistic 16:9. I dropped the photograph. I hadn't told anyone I was moving into the house. Nobody knew where I lived, so who took it? Then I noticed writing on the back, 4 words. You are next. Behind me, I heard footsteps. I turned around, nothing. Then the lamp flickered. And I heard Emily's voice. He's here. Close-up of an old photograph showing the protagonist standing outside the house, mysterious dark figure visible behind him. Photograph held by trembling hands, dramatic flashlight, supernatural horror, cinematic realism, 16:9. I ran upstairs. The hallway was dark. At the other end, someone was standing there, a tall man. He wasn't moving. I shouted, "Who are you?" Nothing. I stepped closer. He disappeared, not walked away, not ran. He simply wasn't there anymore. Then the locked door slammed shut behind me. And 3 knocks came from inside. Knock, knock, knock. Tall, shadowy male figure standing at the end of an old hallway, face completely hidden in darkness, protagonist holding flashlight in foreground, supernatural horror tension, cinematic photorealism, 16:9. The next morning, I searched through the old newspaper archives, and finally, I found Emily's story. She hadn't run away. Her father had been questioned after she disappeared. But there wasn't enough evidence to charge him. The investigation eventually stopped. Then I found another article. Another woman had disappeared from the same house years earlier. Then another. 3 missing women, same house, same family, and every disappearance happened after someone reported hearing 3 knocks. Old newspaper clippings spread across a table revealing a mysterious disappearance from decades ago. Faded photograph of young woman, handwritten notes, flashlight and evidence, cinematic investigative horror, photorealistic 16:9. That night I heard Emily again. But this time, her voice wasn't coming from the locked room, it was coming from downstairs. Run. I grabbed my keys, then I heard another voice, a man's voice right behind me. Don't. I turned, nobody. I ran outside. I never looked back. Dark, empty hallway inside old house. Faint, translucent female figure standing near locked door. Moonlight through window, mysterious supernatural atmosphere, emotional horror, photorealistic 16:9. I sold the house 3 months later. I didn't tell the buyer everything. I know that's wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to go back. A year later, I received a letter, no return address. Inside was a photograph. It showed the house. And in the upstairs window, there was a woman standing behind the glass. Emily, on the back of the photograph were 3 words. I'm still here. I never returned to that house, but sometimes when I'm alone at night, I still hear it. 3 quiet knocks, not on my door, not on my window, but somewhere inside the walls. Knock, 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 and every time I remember what Emily told me. Don't let him find me. Maybe she wasn't talking about herself. Maybe she was warning me that whatever was inside that house never really left. This is hidden witness, and sometimes. The scariest thing about an old house isn't what happened there. It's what may still be living inside it. The abandoned old house at sunrise, front door slightly open, mist around the trees, faint silhouette visible behind an upstairs window, lonely rural road, eerie but beautiful cinematic horror ending, photorealistic 16:9. Thanks for watching. If you saw what others missed, join the Hidden Witness. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the shadows.